Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.
Welcome to Informed Immunity, the podcast dedicated to bringing you the latest evidence-based information on vaccines, community health, and the fight against infectious diseases. I'm Susan Jara, Director of Patient Education at the Global Healthy Living Foundation, and your guide on this journey to better health. In this audio guide, we explore the future of vaccine research, focusing on advancements that could impact chronic conditions. Today, we are joined by two experts, Dr. Philip Dormitzer, Senior Vice President and Global Head Vaccines R&D and Infectious Disease Research at GSK, and Dr. Jamila Louahed, who leads the Global R&D for Therapeutic Vaccines and is the Belgium R&D Site Head at GSK Vaccines. Hi, Jamila and Phil. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Phil, do you want to please start and maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've come to be on this podcast with us?
My name is Phil Dormitzer, and I lead vaccines research and development and infectious disease research at GSK. Our basic job is to develop new vaccines, to maintain the vaccines that are out there, and the goal is ultimately to improve the health of people who receive our vaccines.
Great, thank you. Jamila, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience as well?
My name is Jamila Louahed, and I'm working with Phil as a global head for therapeutic vaccines. And I've been passionate to really understand how immunology and immune system can really play a role to prevent diseases. So I'm really happy about the success that has been done in vaccine and more to come in the future.
Great, thank you so much. Let's just jump right in. Phil, do you mind telling us a little bit about the current state of vaccine research?
So it's a very exciting time in vaccine research because we have a number of platforms or technologies to make vaccines that are really coming together. We have the new vaccines like RNA vaccines, which played such an important role in the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have, for example, the RSV vaccine, which involves the new ability to structurally understand and engineer antigens. There are also new technologies for vaccines against the sugars on the bacteria, the carbohydrates, with a new platform technology we call one of them MAPS. So across a variety of technologies targeting different kinds of pathogens, we have new technologies now being deployed for vaccines.
Great, thank you. Jamila, would you like to add anything?
Maybe just to add that many breakthrough new vaccine has been done thanks to new technology. And as mentioned by Phil, many new technology to better understand the pathogen together with new platform technology has really helped to have vaccine for more hard-to-treat diseases, like the RSV, who took 60 years to be able to have the first vaccine against the RSV.
Wow, 60 years. It's really amazing just hearing about this research and just really helps reassure us that better solutions are on the way for our patient community. So it's really exciting. Let's talk a little bit about some of the innovative approaches that GSK is specifically using in vaccine development.
So maybe I'll mention specifically a couple of things. One is, you mentioned the RSV vaccine. The RSV vaccine, people struggled for years, really since the 1960s, to make an RSV vaccine. And it was a scientific, really, breakthrough that was made initially at NIH when they found out that the antigen people used to combat RSV, the spike protein on the virus, changed its shape. And they actually were able to determine the shape of the molecule that elicited the most efficient immunity and then how to stabilize it in that shape. And then that really set off a new era in RSV vaccines where attempts that hadn't worked in the past, now with this new knowledge, started working. And that led to the RSV vaccine. So it was a clear example of a scientific breakthrough that led to a technological breakthrough that meant a vaccine target that people had struggled with for many, many years now became a tractable target. And today we have effective RSV vaccines.
And Jamila, would you like to add to that?
Again, I think if we look about the amount of data that now we can really capture and new technology, we have a better tools to understand how the pathogen really play a role. And together with this knowledge, we can transform this knowledge into something that can be used in the vaccine compositions. And the best example was mentioned for RSV. The same finding was used for the COVID-19 in the future. And we know now that many new technology is really unlocking new fields like the carbohydrates. How can we overcome the number of serotypes that are associated with pathogen? there is now new technology that can overcome some of the hurdle we had in the past.
Thank you. And can you explain a little more how targeting carbohydrates specifically strengthens the immune response in new vaccine technologies?
If you think about a virus, usually you need to unlock the key that the virus will use to enter into a human cells, because he needs all the machinery of the human cells. So if you find the key, you are in a good track to be able to have something that can really neutralize the virus. A bacteria, it's a different animal. It's bigger than a virus, and usually it has carbohydrate at the external level of the bacteria. And this is what you need to target to be able to neutralize the bacteria. And the tool that you use for viruses are different than the tool that you might use for attacking a bacteria. So having good technology that can induce an immune response against those carbohydrates will be very important.
Great, thank you. That was a really perfect explanation. Appreciate it. Can we talk about some of the potential vaccines that are being developed for individuals who are living with chronic conditions?
I think there is one area where today people does not value existing vaccines for chronic conditions. And I'm always very surprised to see that patients with heart disease, pulmonary diseases, or people that has some immunocompromise, they are usually much more at risk to develop a disease than a healthy adult. And they usually doesn't think about having preventative vaccine that could help them to not worsen their comorbidity status. So I would say, first of all, I would really encourage that people that have some weakened immunity or have strong underlying disease to be able to use a vaccine like vaccine against the flu, vaccine against the pneumococcal bacteria, because if they get infected, usually they are much more at risk to have a severe diseases. So that's, I would say, the first chapter, which is making sure that adults that has comorbidity really ensure that they can prevent the disease. The second piece, which is more, how can we eventually in the future tackle chronic diseases through an active immunizations? I'd like to use one example that people will understand easily is if you think about the breakthrough innovation that helped protect against hepatitis B. Very good preventative vaccines, which has been worldwide distributed. You are protected against developing a chronic disease. Unfortunately, many people have not been vaccinated and they have encountered a virus and developed what we call a chronic hepatitis B. Those patients develop this disease because they have not been able to mount a good immune response to be able to be protected. So what we are really developing, using all our expertise, is to see how eventually can we intervene in those patients that has developed the disease. How can we reset the immune response to be able to have a new treatment to really have those patients to live better? Because unfortunately today, nothing really has worked to treat those patients. That's a chronic infectious disease. The other one, which I really like, and people tend to forget it, one of the best vaccines that prevent cancer is the vaccine against papillomavirus, HPV. What if tomorrow we have more of those vaccines that can eventually prevent cancer, which can eventually prevent some of the chronic diseases that are associated with those infections? And this is an area where we are actively looking for, because we have some successes that have shown that we are able to modify the course of the disease. And we really want to make sure that eventually we can really leverage the tool. There has been some recent finding that suggests that by vaccinating adults with a vaccine that prevents shingles disease, we might eventually delay some neurodegenerative diseases like dementia. If this turns out to be proven in prospective study, this is a tremendous opportunity to be able to tackle those diseases where today there is not much that is working. So if tomorrow we can have appropriate treatment, we call therapeutic vaccine that can delay the disease, this would be very transformative in the field of prevention.
Wow, yeah. I mean, most people think of vaccines as protection, not prevention. So it's really interesting to hear them in this light, and how vaccines, especially for people living with chronic conditions, can help with comorbidities. And wow, I mean, if we could possibly reduce dementia risk with a shingles vaccine, that definitely makes the future feel brighter. Phil, did you want to comment on this at all?
So there have been now a number of observational studies that have seen an association between immunization against the virus that causes both chickenpox and shingles, Bacillus zoster virus, specifically shingles vaccination, and lower rates of dementia. What we don't know is if that's a causal association or not. It's simply an association. They could be both caused by the same thing. So what we need to know now is to figure out, is it a causal association or not? That's going to take a lot more study. So at this point, the reason to take a shingles vaccine is to prevent shingles. We will determine through additional study whether the association that has been observed between taking a shingles vaccine and a lower risk or delayed dementia is causal or not.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. I know that there's been a shift in public perception about vaccination with, the COVID pandemic, and it certainly has influenced vaccine research as well. Jamila or Phil, will one of you want to kind of talk about this, how the COVID pandemic played a role in vaccine research and public perception of vaccine?
Sure. Maybe I'd mention maybe 3 brief things. First, one thing that the COVID-19 pandemic response with vaccines really taught us is how when everybody cooperates, how fast things can go. It wasn't just industry. It was regulators, it was physicians. Everybody was really on the same page, and we accomplished the development of that vaccine as an industry faster than anybody thought was possible. Second thing we learned was a new technology. It was the first time a new technology, mRNA vaccines, which are very good at adapting quickly and being changed quickly when you need to. For example, when a new pathogen like SARS-CoV-2 comes out, how quickly that can be deployed. The third thing we learned, it was a little more sobering, is that when you introduce new technology, it takes people a little bit to adjust to it. So we also saw, although many people were very glad to get the vaccine, also vaccine hesitancy. And so it's important to not only bring new technologies forward, but also to make sure that we provide people with the information they need to feel comfortable with those new technologies as well.
I would add also, trusted information is key. I think people need to make sure that the information they get through a clinical study, but also from other key stakeholders in the healthcare are important. And usually people doesn't start by not thinking about vaccine is worse. It's sometimes something that has been prone. So making sure that the right information is shared is very important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why we're coming together today, to make sure our patient community has trusted information from experts like you. So I really do appreciate you breaking things down. Let's jump to our next question. What role do chronic condition vaccines play in improving patient outcomes?
Really, one vaccine really comes to mind that addresses a chronic condition, and that is the Shingles, the shingles vaccine. When you get infected with varicella zoster virus as a child, you get chickenpox. But the virus doesn't go away. It goes latent in your cells, and it stays there really the rest of your life. And it can come back later in life as shingles, a painful condition with a rash that spreads along the root of a nerve. Now, you would think you got infected with this virus. When you're a child, you still have it. What good would immunization do? You're already immune. But in fact, when you immunize, even people who've already been infected and are now chronically infected with varicella zoster virus, you greatly reduce the likelihood that they'll get shingles. And one of the complications that people really don't like from shingles is postherpetic neuralgia, when the pain lasts even after the rash goes away. So it's an example of really something quite surprising, that immunizing someone who's chronically infected with the virus has an immune response against that virus. By improving the response against that virus, you can actually prevent some of the long-term consequences of that infection.
Great. Yes, a lot of people in our community talk about shingles and how painful it is, and it's really important for them to get vaccinated.
Shingles is a great example where you are infected and this virus is part of your body. And if you think about many other viruses can also be associated with the same chronic condition. Herpes simplex virus, which is causing either soul cores or genital herpes, those are important viruses to be tackled in the future if you want to prevent the disease associated with those viruses in patients.
Yeah, thank you. It is. It's not only preventing the disease, but improving quality of life as well, right? So let's talk a little bit about what patients can possibly expect from the future vaccine developments.
Maybe I can mention a couple of things. Having seen the example of what RNA could do during the pandemic, it might be useful against other pathogens that change a lot. Influenza comes to mind, where although it's not a new pathogen, every year you need to update the flu vaccine to match new flu strains. So that RNA technology that allowed us to respond quickly to the pandemic may allow us to respond more quickly to changes in, for example, the flu virus. Another thing that might come along is, and this is just slightly off of vaccines, and that is advances in diagnostics. One thing we saw during COVID is the use of home diagnostic kits. Diagnostics are getting better, they're getting easier to use. And so maybe not always for vaccines, but sometimes for anti-infective drugs. The ability to test, even at home, for what you've got may help you know what you should take. It could also affect immunization in other ways, as the ability to not only determine what people are ill with at home, but what they're immune to at home starts to advance.
I think there is a lot of effort to make sure that we continue to innovate, to improve our vaccines, to have a better coverage when it comes to protections. We are also looking to approach that can eventually provide more compliance and coverage for patients who have vaccine that has a long-lasting protection is definitely an area that we are working on. Combination of vaccines is also something that can be of use for the patients, but also can help to be protected for broader pathogens. So the other piece that we believe that can be also expected in the future is to have new technology that can have not only a long-lasting protections, but better schedule. One can imagine that eventually having schedules that are much more convenient for patients might also help more coverage in the future.
Yeah, long-lasting protection, prevention. We talked about a lot of simple reasons to get vaccinated. And we also know it's important for patients to stay up to date in order to make better health decisions. It can help patients really learn about new or improved vaccines that may offer better protection. With that in mind, can you please talk a little bit about where patients really should be going for vaccine research information?
Always good to be an informed consumer. And there's a lot of information out there. Some of it is good, but some of it is a little questionable. I think consulting your doctor is very important, and making sure that you have a solid relationship with a primary care provider, because there's a lot to know out there. So sometimes it's very helpful to have a reliable guide to work with. So by staying up on the latest research from reputable sources, one can help sort truth from fiction out there, which is very important when you're trying to make decisions about your own health.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorting truth from fiction is key, right? And we talked a lot about vaccine myths in a previous episode of the audio guide. So if you haven't already, please go back and have a listen. Jamila, did you want to add any points?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of information that can be available from trusted sources. I think WHO, the CDC, they are informed scientific community as well as journal that can really be used. There is also patient advocacy where people can also rely, so they usually are quite vocal. But this is where, for me, the more informed you are, the better you can make your own judgments to be able to be efficacious.
Absolutely. Maybe we can just wrap up. Is there a final statement or a few words you think that patients should really keep in mind when thinking about vaccine and vaccine research?
Maybe a couple really simple things. First, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Vaccines have really transformed the health of the world. There are many vaccines that we now take for granted. The childhood vaccines, they've been around for a long, long time. They remain important. When you take away vaccine coverage, these things, with rare exceptions like smallpox, are really not gone forever. They're still out there. So it is very important to maintain current vaccines. And today, vaccines aren't just for children anymore. We now see increasing importance of adult vaccination. We've had flu for quite some time. Shingles, a little bit less long. Pneumococcal vaccines also important for adults. And now we have the RSV vaccines as well. So the number of vaccines that can help prevent us through the life cycle, not just when we're children, but when we're adults as well, is increasing. And they make a difference.
Great. And Jamila, can I turn to you with the same question? Any last parting words about vaccination research for our community?
Maybe a provocative one. I want to say that unfortunately, vaccines are a victim of their success because many diseases have disappeared and people tend to forget the benefits of the immunizations. So it might be provocative, but this is really what has happened, unfortunately, sometimes in patients that people had forgotten devastating disease that now we don't see anymore. And the last maybe conclusion, I would say there is no greater return on investment than stopping disease before it starts, which is what you do with the vaccination.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your research and breaking everything down for our community. Thank you for all the incredible work you're doing to advance vaccine research. It's really been a pleasure having you both with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a fun time to be in vaccine research.
This is Informed Immunity. Thank you for joining us on this audio guide. Remember, the fight against infectious diseases is a community effort, and your participation is crucial. For more reliable information on vaccines and to stay up to date on the latest in public health, Visit our website at ghlf.org or check out the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention or World Health Organization website. This podcast was made possible with support from GSK. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate our podcast, write a positive review, and share it with your friends and family. It will help more people like you find us. Until next time, stay informed and stay healthy. Together, we can make a difference.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation Podcast Network.